I need a process, but the process is like a pen or a brush. Put the brush in the hands of Picasso or put the brush in the hands of my tax accountant, probably the result is going to be different. And yet I was observing so many companies out there embracing, for instance, design thinking, but this applies to any other culture, embracing a new process, a new approach. And then things were not working and they would blame the tool. Oh, I brought in design thinking. I brought in this design firm. We did all this workshop. We're running things with this new tool and things are not working. Well, when you are blaming design thinking because of that, you were blaming the brush.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the HR Leaders Podcast. On today's episode, I'm joined by Mauro Porcini, who's a Senior Vice President and Chief Design Officer at PepsiCo. He's also author of the book, The Human Side of Innovation, The Power of People in Love with People. During the conversation, Mauro shares his personal take and experience on innovation and the traits that innovators embody and nurture within a thriving work culture. As always, before we jump into the video, make sure you hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and follow on your favorite podcast platform. With that being said, let's jump in. Welcome to the show, Mauro. How are you?
I'm very good, and thanks for having me.
Who's our special guest that we have with you today?
We have Leone here, our sweet Pomeranian. We have also Bella, but she's more shy and she's hiding.
Love it. They seem very well behaved.
They are.
Amazing. I love the shelf behind you as well. Is that like the artistic book? Is that a bookshelf I can see behind you?
It is a bookshelf.
That's cool. Yeah. What does the word say on the wall behind you? This must be the place.
Correct.
What does that mean to you?
Well, I love the fact that you're asking me what it means to me, because it's there because it may mean so many different things to many people looking at us today. To me, this is the place of creativity, of thinking, of relaxation, but at the end of the day, also connection, because I do so many meetings like the one we're having today in this room. This is the room where we gather with friends, we connect the two tables, and we have big lunches and dinners. So is the place in so many different ways. But I'm thinking about the people, for instance, watching a podcast like this one, and this could be a place for them of many different things. It could be a place of inspiration, or maybe they get annoyed by me, or, God knows what. So this must be the place. It's up to you.
I love it. I always notice that, I love asking people that question, what does it mean to you? Because so many times in life we make assumptions. I love asking the question, what does that mean to you? Because I have certain things in my room and house that it wouldn't mean anything to anyone else. They're like, what is this crazy thing, Chris? I have a lot of artwork because I grew up when I was an artist when I grew up. I did drop out of school, but I went for 1 year and it was in art. And a lot of the artwork I have, it doesn't mean anything to anyone else but me. The story behind it, the moment where I was, in the mind, the state of mind I was in when I made that. All of those memories, right, and feelings come back. As well, so it's hard to convey that sometimes to people.
There is something so important in what you just say, the idea of meaning connected to a person. If you think about the structure of language, this is something I studied at school when I was studying semiotic and semantic, and then it became so important for me, both in my personal life and in my professional journey. So the definition of meaning is defined by a series of ingredients. There is the sender, there is the message, there is the receiver, there is the code, there is the media, context, and noises. So right now, me talking to you, I'm the sender, I'm saying something, that's the message, you are the receiver. And then the code is the the English language with Italian accent. Is my body language for people looking at us right now because I move a lot. But it's also the way I'm dressed. Is even the house behind me is part of the code. It's the visual code. My words assume a different meaning because of everything you're seeing right now. And then the media is the mic I'm using right now, and then is the platform we're using to record it, and is the screen that people are using to look at us. The context is both physical, is where you're looking at this podcast, but is mostly cultural. If you are in America, what we're going to say may be perceived in a very different way than
Yep.
if you are in China. As an example, the noises could be the washing machine that is, working on our background, but it could be also another podcast that you have been listening to yesterday or tomorrow that is saying things differently from what we're saying today, and maybe in contrast with what I'm saying, it gives a completely different meaning to what I say. So why I'm saying all of this? Because to define that meaning, you need to be crystal clear about every single element that I just mentioned. First, the sender. And that's why when you say, is meaningful to you, what is the meaning for you? For you, to you should be always there, because there is no meaning without an audience, without a receiver, without somebody. And when we communicate, you have a podcast and you are communicating to somebody, or you design a product or a brand, or maybe it's the brand of your company and in front of your employees. Every time we communicate, and we communicate 24/7 in everything we do, even when we don't realize, we need to understand the person that we are talking to. Meaning is totally relative, and it changes depending on the receiver. But also the code and the media are changing completely communication today. In America, we are fresh of elections. I mean, the midterm elections. In the book I publish, I talk about elections starting with Obama, and how Obama was able to manage code and media in such a powerful way. Back then, I was still living in Italy, but I had a team in the United States, in Minnesota. I was working for 3M. And so I remember the morning after the election, I called my team, and they were all dead. And I was like, why are you so tired? And we were like, well, we've been celebrating all night, the victory of Obama. We're so happy. I was like, wow, why? I mean, what is he saying that you like so much? And I tell you, they had difficulties explaining what was the program of Obama, the message of Obama. Obama won, with many, many people through code and media. The media was the fact that it was the first president in an election that started to use digital media, Twitter particularly. So the newness of the media made the guy more cool, more appealing to new generations.
Yeah.
More relatable. And then the code. A black guy, looking, very young, dressing in a very informal way, playing basketball. That's all code. He won with code and media on top of the message, obviously. Trump, the same thing.
Same thing, yeah.
Trump used media in a completely different way, in a non-presidential way. But a lot of people, the people love Trump, love that of Trump, and the words he was using, the body language he was using, his facial expressions, that was all code, and he used that in a very powerful way. So today, when we define meaning, we need to be so aware of every single ingredient of this communication. And by the way, all these ingredients keep changing. The media keep evolving. You have new platforms. The codes change. The receiver change because they change, on the base of society, the context change. So and to be up to speed on everything, what do we need to do? We need to be curious and read and inform ourselves and connect with others and respectfully talk with different people different than us, so that we can change perspective and we can understand where the world is going, where society is going, and what is our point of view on all of this.
It's such a fascinating topic, isn't it? Like, it's a never-ending learning journey as well. And unfortunately, though, I feel like it's one of the areas that leaders and businesses fail so often. Many, for example, in HR, so many of the leaders I'm working with are going through these big digital transformations, and where they're failing is in the messaging, the delivery. What does it mean for Chris as an employee, this transformation, this technology, this platform? They really struggle with that part. They have the knowledge and they have the experience, and they can create the product, but then how do you communicate that to your audience, to your customers, stakeholders, to your employees? I feel that's the biggest part that they struggle with.
Yeah, and now you get to them. So there is the message, but think about the media as an example. In the communication to my own company, so to PepsiCo, and in PepsiCo, it goes from my own design team all the way to the employees of the company, all the way to management. I've been using, immediately you think and communicating internally to the company, you think about the internal platforms. There are many internal platforms, newsletters, all kinds of things. And yes, of course you use them. But for me, one of the most powerful platforms of communication to internal people have been my personal external social media and the social media that I created for PepsiCo Design for the function. So Instagram of PepsiCo Design, Instagram of Mauro Porcini, LinkedIn of Mauro Porcini, the website of PepsiCo Design. These platforms were platforms and are platforms that I used to talk to the world. But in reality, in the world, there is also the PepsiCo component. And they're so powerful because the moment you talk to the world, it's not anymore just you saying something top down as an executive of a company or as a function talking to other functions. All of a sudden is you talking to the world and the world can react. And when the employees see that the world is reacting positively, we have with PepsiCo Design, as well as with my social media that we monitor, we have 100% positive sentiment. That is pretty remarkable. So when the company is like, wow, we're doing all these things, and it's us, this company is not design, because I'm talking about things that we do with the design function, together with marketing, with R&D, endorsed by the top of the company, delivered by the body of the company, all the sales organization. So we're all in this together. They're like, and they see the positive comments, the endorsement, the feedback, the enthusiasm, the hundreds of thousands of impressions. They're like, wow, that's real, is authentic, is not PR for what we do, internally. It really works. So my point is, in the definition of meaning, and in this case, when you want to engage your own employees, the unexpected use of media, eventually using external media to reach internal people in this case, could be really, really powerful. But too many times we default to the convention, we use the usual things, and maybe the message is great, and you spend months and months on defining the message, tweaking the message, and then you fail in defining the right code and media, and people don't listen to it. Last example, I fly like crazy, and and every time you fly, there is the moment where they tell you all the safety procedures if things go wrong in the plane. And at a certain point years ago, I think it was Delta, the first that started to do it, but it could be another airline. I don't remember precisely. But they created a video. It was fun.
On the back of the seats.
Yes. Instead of being boring, and it was like, oh, here we are again. I want to focus on other things. And there is this video. All of a sudden, it was fun, and you wanted to watch it because it was like, wow, this is cool, and he made the airline cool as well. So there was a halo effect. Not just it was grabbing your attention, but it was a halo effect on the brand of the airline. This is fascinating. Message exactly the same, code completely different, body language, visual. It was fun. Media, the same. You change one element, all of a sudden you grab the attention of people. What is that element that you need to change in your company, in your life, to grab the attention of the people you're serving? Everything starts anyway with understanding those people and why eventually they're not engaged. And if you run a company, instead of blaming them for not being engaged, try to understand what you can do differently to engage them. And too many times, once again, we focus so much just on the message. That's the typical problem of marketing. You focus so much on the message and you forget how to tweak code and media. This is where design can help so much, because the code is so much visual language and the look and feel and even the motion graphics and how you move and behave. There is a lot there that designers can help, and obviously all the world of human science, behavioral science can help as well.
Yeah, it's such a fascinating topic, and it seems obvious when you really think about it. Like you rather than trying to pull all of those people to you, you went to them. They're already using Instagram. They're already using all of those platforms, so they're naturally going to check in the same way they check in on their other Instagram friends and posts and LinkedIn, etc. So, and also people follow people. If you look on LinkedIn, the trending articles aren't from companies, they're from people, because people follow people and they feel like they're having a conversation with you. directly, right? And you're no longer just an executive in the business. You're someone who's actually human all of a sudden that they can communicate with as well.
Authenticity.
Yes.
And that's why it's so important. You know, you may be more inclined to use social media or less inclined, even though today in this digital world we live in, it's very important that even if you don't like it so much, somehow you figure out how to have a presence in a way or the other. And if you're less inclined, you're less of a communicator, obviously you will have somebody in your team feeding you, you know, the messages. And that's okay. It's fine. You know, maybe you're great in so many other things and you're not, you know, is not your comfort zone, that area. But do an effort, even in that case, when they feed you all this information, to tweak it with your own words, with your own language, maybe to add a couple of
personal
ideas,
stories, right? Personal stories.
Yeah, the sound, you need to make it personal. When it's personal, it becomes authentic. You know, I am Italian, and so my English is not perfect. And when I write in English in LinkedIn, in Instagram, and well, actually, I always write in English in LinkedIn and Instagram. Obviously, here and there, I make some mistake. Even that makes the message
better. Yeah.
That's great. So you think, oh my God, he made a mistake. I mean, I think at the beginning I was like, I made a mistake. But at the end, you know what? Yeah, maybe they think it's not really great in English, but if the message is authentic, is personal, and they love the content, actually the little, you know, misspelling of a word makes it even more warm and real. And it's like, okay, this is not coming from corporate communication. And it's not.
Yeah, as soon as they feel like it's a top-down message, it's like there's this disconnect. So when was the inspiration behind the book? The human side of innovation. When did that? What was the inspiration behind the book?
The human side of innovation, the power of people, in love with people. I love to mention the subtitle that often people don't mention, because the subtitle for me.
Say it again. What was the? Say it one more time. Say that one more time.
So is the human side of innovation, the power of people in love with people. The subtitle for me, ideally, would have been the title. The problem that going back to that idea of meaning and communication, if that was the title, people would have thought, wow, it's a romantic book, you know, written by an Italian about the story of love. And it's not. So I think we did the right thing putting innovation in the title. And so we are clear about what that is. But I mentioned the second part because it's so much the core of the book, is this idea of people. The second set of people refers to this idea of human centricity, refocusing the culture of your company, the processes of company, everything you do in your business to creating value for people. The first set of people instead are the innovators, the entrepreneurs, the leaders, the employees in general of any company. The moment they need to change the status quo, and they become innovators by definition, even if they don't have the innovation title in the innovation word in their title. And then the love is the love for what they do, the love for the people that they serve, and the love for the people surrounding them, driving things with them. And I came to the realization of the importance of all these elements later in life, even though I thought I knew that I wanted to write a book from the very beginning of my life. As a child, I loved writing, and then when I started to go to high school, I realized that I really loved the world of literature, philosophy that I was studying. So that was one passion of mine. The other one was the world of art. I would sketch and draw every day, and that was, again, another love of my life, and is still today. So when I ended up becoming a designer, I didn't give up on these other things. I love them. I witnessed my parents as a kid doing these things every day. My mom was working in finance. She didn't like it at all. She left it when she was 38. She left her job to stay close to her family, making a sacrifice because we didn't have a penny. We were an humble family, but she just wanted to be close to the family and go after what she really loved. And so she's been writing poems and thoughts on her diary all her life. And then later on, she self-published 8 books with my father, just out of passion, not to sell them. They are in sale, but you can buy them, but it's for them. And my father he's an architect. He was a high school professor, but his passion was painting and drawing, and he would do it
Interesting.
every day. He did it every day of his life, and still today in his 80s, he's doing it. And so these books that my mom and my father were publishing were mixing poems and thoughts of my mom with the art of my father. And I'm saying this because I grew up witnessing people doing what they really love, no matter in that case, their job. I ended up doing what I really love, and this is totally overlapping my job, and I feel really lucky and privileged. But even if that's not the case, to go after the something that you really, really love, and this is not possible. Not everybody can combine the two dimensions. It's not that easy. It should be an intent and an ambition, but I understand also that it would be naive to think that it's possible for the billions of people out there in the world. But finding a way, anyway, in your life to do something that you really, really love is so important. That for me was painting and writing. And so I started to take notes about what I was experiencing early on in my life, writing things, and those things then became the topics of speeches I would do in conferences, articles I would write, or interviews I will give. Later on, maybe some chapters here and there of books of others. And then when I was ready psychologically, like I was in a good state of mind to enjoy writing an entire book, that is not an easy task.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, now I'm going to do it. But the message, anybody will find in the book if they read it is something that I've been developing over the past 20 years of professional life in a more conscious way. But then many of the stories in the book, they come from my childhood and things that I learned, with my parents, with my friends, with tough experiences in life that form anyway that way of thinking that helped me so much in what I did at work in the past 20 years of my life.
It's so interesting you say that, because it's quite strange that most people, like you said, are not their career isn't their passion. Like the vast majority of people that I speak to, they go to a job because they need to make money, right? They've got a job. And I remember going to a like an offsite kind of mastermind workshop where I was in a room with CEOs of global brands, marketing directors of companies like Coca-Cola and others. And it was the workshop was around your why, how to find your why and your purpose. And I got invited to it. Very fortunate to be invited by one of our friends. And I was sitting on a table and people were asking me questions around what were my passions when I was younger. And I said, art. I love to draw, paint. I love clay. I love sculpting. And for me, it was the escape from all of the difficulties that I had to face. I unfortunately had a lot of domestic abuse in my house, drugs, alcohol, and I would get lost in the art. I could just, when I'm painting and I'm drawing, there's no stress. I'm not thinking about anything else. And then that was my escape, if that makes sense, from everything.
It's the flow state, right?
Yeah, flow state. Yeah, 100%. Exactly. The world disappeared and I was just in the moment. And I somewhere along the line, I convinced myself that I could never make a career, make money doing it. And I wanted to help my mum and my family have a better life. And I just felt like, well, I have to leave art behind in order to pursue a career that will make me loads of money. That was my very simple conversation as a kid. So I stopped doing it and I pursued sales, as I knew that was a fast track for me, that, if I become a very great salesperson, I could make a lot of money. And I did that. But in this meeting, one of the things I discovered, which was really kind of, the rest of the group discovered it for me. They're like, Chris, you're doing that now. And I was like, what do you mean? They're like, look at what you do for a living. You create podcasts, you create content, you create new products. You are doing an artistic, creative role. And I was like, what do you mean? They're like, look at all of the things that you're doing that's made you successful at HR Leaders in the Business. It's all creative, artistic work. It's just in a different medium. You're not painting, you're not drawing, but it's the same skill set, if that makes sense. And I was like, wow, like, I was like, yeah, you're right. Like that's my value that I bring to the business. That's what gives me energy every single day. And it was, anyway, it was just, I wanted to share that story. It was kind of like a moment for me that I was like, I am doing it, but in a different way, in a different medium, if that makes sense.
But
Well.
you just say the keyword, different medium. Going back to the structural communication, when you have the clarity, when I study English, for instance, or I study French and I study Latin, for me, studying the grammar has been always so important, because then it gives you the tools to essentially grow the learning of the language over the years in a very very autonomously, while many techniques in the past few years start without the grammar, immediately jumping into the language and everything. I think the grammar is so important. So if you think about the grammar of communication, you're exactly right. Art, music, public speaking, podcasting, all of these things, they're all the same thing. We are communicating, and we try to reach the mind and the heart of the receiver. We are just using and the message, by the way, the message could be the same across all these different fields. Mm-hmm. The difference is the medium. So that's why, and I have goosebumps saying this, because it's a realization I arrived to later in life. As I told you, as a kid, I had this passion for writing. I had this passion for art. Then I discovered design at school, and I was like, wow, this is the job of my life. I love it. And then while I was starting to work in design, I love to do public speaking. So at the beginning, I would beg the professors of my university to give me a stage with the students to start talking about what I was doing. But later on, I realized that all of this was exactly the same thing. I love to communicate and reach the heart of people. I could do that with a product that I design, with a brand that I design, with an experience that I design, with a speech that I give, with a book that I write. They are all the same thing.
I'll add another one to that, which I didn't even realize until you just said it. I started dancing. Right. So, and I just fell in love with dancing. Break dancing, but also body popping or popping. It's a different style, like hip hop. And we would do a lot of performances. And again, it would be telling another story through dance, right? We did, my friend did a show in the West End called The Pied Piper, the story of the Pied Piper. But he he did the dance version of that. And he also choreographed a kind of opening ceremony for the Olympics in the UK as well. But just telling that story, right? And I didn't when I started dancing again, didn't make that connection. Didn't realize it was just another medium to express and to tell a story through the dance. So all of these things that I was doing that I thought that I was not doing, I was moving away from my passion, and I really was just exploring it in different mediums that I didn't do before. And it's similar before people were on. The reason I've got quite a large LinkedIn following like your own is when LinkedIn first came out and no one was using it, I was one of the first people. So just how this is a crazy story, but I still pay the original LinkedIn fee. So £14 a month for the #1 package. I still have a legacy contract with LinkedIn. Now it's like £100 a month. And whilst all of the other salespeople were on the phone cold calling, I was like, forget about doing 150 phone calls a day and 5 hours on the phone. I'm going to try a new medium of DMing, directly messaging chief HR officers and speaking to them through social media. And all of a sudden my sales 10x'd. And I didn't tell no one about this because my leadership team when they found out, they went crazy. You need to get on the phone. I was like, but this is working. Like this medium that yes, it does work and it worked for you a long time, but I'm telling you, the social media marketing, this is like 10 years ago before people even said social media marketing. I was having so much success and people were like, how comes that Chris, he's only on the phone when he's closing a deal? Because I was only ever speaking to people that are interested, that people that I built response with. I followed their posts. I've liked it. I've spoke to them online. I built this rapport. And even to this day, 90% of my podcast guests come through LinkedIn. You know, we make, you know, hundreds of thousands of pounds of our business revenue is through my LinkedIn account. So, and I just remember sitting there as a 18, 19-year-old salesperson being like, these people, there's a new medium that no one knows about, that I was so excited to be in this new world of social media selling. And that was what led to me being one of the most successful salesperson globally in the company. And they had no idea how I was doing it. I didn't tell anyone how I was doing.
And by the way, now, you know, for the people listening to us, let's translate this into the world of today. What is the equivalent of LinkedIn 10 years ago, 20 years ago, today? And you know, there are many platforms. So it doesn't mean that you need to figure out now what is the right platform.
Mm-hmm.
What we need to do is to experiment,
yes,
to be out there, to try new things. For instance, the world of the metaverse, the world of the virtual reality. You know, one advice that I would give, or a suggestion, or something that is working for me, you know, I don't have the arrogance of giving advices, but I bought a couple of years ago, I tell this story in the book. Actually, I tell you the full story as I tell it in the book. I am in the Hamptons in my house, and I have guests over as every weekend in the summer. I wake up in a very early morning, and I see one of these guests. That is a famous designer, Stefan Sagmeister. For the designers listening to us, you know who he is. He's out there in the garden, and he's moving like crazy, like if he's catching flies. I don't know, and he's totally sweats, you know. Like, what's going on? And he has a visor on his face. He had the Oculus Quest on his face. What he was doing, he was working out through an app that is called Supernatural, where essentially you find yourself in amazing locations, like on top of the Machu Picchu or in Blue Lagoon in Iceland, and many, many other locations. So you are there and you feel like you're really, really there. And you have two joystick, two devices in your hands, and in the app essentially you are floating on top of Blue Lagoon, on top of the Machu Picchu, and you have these spheres of light arriving to you. And then you have two how do you call it, the light sabers, two lightsabers like in Star Wars, and you need to cut and destroy these balls that arrive to you. But everything is studied to make you work out, to make you move and do squat and move your arms. And there is music that is really, really cool. You can select the music you like the most, and you have the trainers that are there and you know, are telling you what to do. And it's so fun because essentially you're playing, you're not working out, but you're burning so much calories. So I looked at that, and I was with another friend, and we're like, wow, we tried it and we bought it right away. So in the past couple of years, I've been using this to work out. But what intrigued me a lot was also that essentially I was somehow discovering a new platform, a new technology, becoming familiar with the use of that, knowing that anyway, in a way or the other, that is going to be the future. A future where we're not going to have that huge device in front of our eyes. Is, you know, technology will help us and will create something that is lighter and easier, more user-friendly, let's put it this way. But we know that we're going to have a future for us and our kids, where we live a physical life that is going to be blended with a virtual life in two different ways. There will be a parallel virtual life where you meet people, you will interact with them, you will buy products, you will dress up to be cool in those communities. But then, you know, because you're meeting them there, you also want to meet them sooner or later in your real life. So you will still fly, or we still take a car, you will still go to a restaurant or a bar, because we still need that interaction.
Yeah,
that's one. The other one is the world of technology that will amplify our physical life, augmenting our reality. And so the more we get familiar with these technologies today, maybe just having fun, playing with it, the more ready we will be to leverage it in the best possible way, and maybe understanding unexpected use of the platform in the future. I will close, you know, this thought with something that I heard in a conference, I think 15 years ago. It was the World Business Forum, and the guy on stage before me, I don't even remember his name anymore, but he used to be the the chief editor of Wired magazine. And he left Wired magazine a few years before that speech. And in the speech, he was talking about how he was using 3D printing to essentially produce drones and a variety of different flying machines for the NASA. But the story that he told us is how everything started. And the way everything started is that he was intrigued by this 3D printing technology. He bought a machine and he started to use it with the kids to create toys. And they would create a few toys, and then other kids were like, oh, we want to have it too. And then you start to create more. And then they started to run a small production. They started to sell things. And then from one thing, the other, they started to create a business out of it. And he was telling the audience, imagine 20, 30 years ago when the first personal computers came out. We were using them, I don't know, many of us to play. We're using the Commodore and the Sinclair
starts with play, yeah.
To play. But what was happening was that we were getting used to the platform. And then at a certain point, some of us started to code. Some of us started to use it in different ways. So his invite, and this is my invite today, is experiment with new technologies. Even if you are not leveraging completely the technology, even if you're just having fun with it, what is really happening, you're getting familiar with the platform. And then once you get familiar with the platform, new ideas will come and new unexpected use. And, what you did with LinkedIn is going to come out of this. And so I think it's the best advice that I heard years ago, and I've been practicing.
It's really cool. It's like a lot of people, when they think about VR and the metaverse, etc., like for me, I grew up playing Halo, and I still play Halo, and I play with the same group of people for the last 15 years, and we've never met. And these are lawyers, wow. These are executives. One of the executives is one of the senior executives at Google in Europe. These are, not when people think of gamers, they think stereotypical, you haven't got a job, you're at home gaming. But if anything, it's actually the opposite. A lot of the adults that I play with are very successful and then the gaming is their escape, which for me is an escape from the stress, and I can go. But one of the things interesting to your point, and I think this translates to working in a hybrid environment now, where we're meeting new employees through Zoom and other digital mediums, is even though we've never met, I've got some of the closest relationships and bonds with those people. And we connect through our avatars. So I have my character on Halo. My body armor is a certain color that represents my taste. My emblem has a story behind it, which my team members know. My gamer tag, which is Battle Live, and there's a name, but so we all know all of these things. One of my friends is called Lawyer Up, and he's a lawyer. And Lawyer Up is his profile on there. And so although we've never met each other, we connected through this digital world and this love for that. So I feel like when we move to the metaverse or VR, AR, I do feel like it's going to be for me. It will be quite a not natural transition, but it won't feel unfamiliar. And I feel like the younger generation who are already living in these platforms it's gonna seem normal for them. My daughter, who's 4 years old, she's already playing games. It's actually scary how she can open up the iPad and play some advanced games and know all the settings and how to do it and everything. And she's 4. It's just blows my mind.
It's
to know that she can.
I'm witnessing this.
Yeah.
I'm witnessing this through my nephews as well. The son of my brother is 8, and for 1 year now, is on YouTube channel, under the supervision of the parents, and it's very interesting how he's using creatively the channel. So essentially is the director, obviously, but he's also the actor. So he invents different roles for himself, and he plays as an actor. He brings in his friends, and they all play different roles in these fantasy stories that he creates. And then he assembled all the videos together.
And he learned how to edit, right? That's the crazy.
Exactly. So he's editing, he's adding graphic, motion graphic. So imagine he's director, editor, graphic designer, user interface.
It's amazing.
And I mean, all together. And this is all an exercise of creativity. that it is going to use in a way or the other in the future. And it's fascinating. So often we are against social media or media of any kind and these digital devices for kids because they're like, well, they're not good for them. They should be out and playing. And yes, I think
no, there's definitely a part of that.
Playing, but there is also a positive component that we cannot disregard. So at the end of the day, it's always about balance. Obviously, you need both dimensions.
That's the point, though, right? Like, I would be out of business if I didn't game, and I'll tell you why. Because when I played Halo, I taught myself how to video edit. I taught myself how to live stream. I taught myself video production. So when the pandemic hit and we had to go fully remote and virtual, I already had the skill set to be like, this is how we set up the live production switcher. This is how we edit content. This is how we set up our cameras. And I was like, wow, all of a sudden this thing that I personally did in my spare time because of my love of gaming is now directly impacting our business. And we actually 4x'd our revenue during the pandemic because we could adapt and pivot quickly and do that. Whereas I was definitely told even by my parents and friends that that's a waste of time. Why are you doing that? You know, no one cares about those things. So, but it was now one of the most in demand skills during the pandemic. If you needed to go hybrid, and you needed to have someone who understood the technical side of being able to do that. But listen, I'm worried about time, and we haven't even jumped into the book in more detail. I feel like we need to do a part 2 because I had so many questions about your book that I wanted to talk to. Yeah, exactly. We spoke before about superpowers, right? And I'd love for you to share more on the thoughts and what you share in that, because I think it's just a fascinating topic.
Yeah, look. Many years ago, I was at the beginning of my 3M journey. So I spent 10 years in the 3M company from Minnesota, the tech company, and then 10 years now in PepsiCo. So I was at the beginning of 3M, and my role was to bring design inside the company. But I was 27. The title was design coordinator. I was working just on the consumer business. That is one of the 6 businesses just in Europe. So it was a medium level role in Italy, but in the hierarchy of the company was a low level kind of role. But I came in with this idea that was going to change the way of doing innovation in the company, driving human centricity, or being design driven. The two things are exactly the same thing. Again, it was a very naive dream of a kid, but I say also in the book, if you don't have a dream, you'll never be able to make it come true. And the dream is by definition naive. So never stop dreaming, do things in the way. But back then, with this dream in mind, and after studying in school, a few years having my own agency, working in Philips Design, I came in thinking, okay, I need to bring in the tools and the methodologies and the ways of working of the world of design. And especially there is this buzzword, design thinking.
Yeah.
And there are specific methodologies connected to that word, the double diamond, the idea of diverging, exploring, and then you start to prototype and you converge, you test, you validate, you learn, you create new prototypes, and you diverge again, and you talk with people, test, and so on and so forth. That's an example of one of those methodologies. I will bring in renowned design firms and innovation firms from all around the world, paid millions of dollars. And in these firms, there are hundreds of people, and they will sell you the methodology, the tool, the ways of working, their brand. And here I am, I start to run projects, dozens of projects, hundreds of projects at a certain point. And then after a few years, I look back, try to understand what was working, what was not, to amplify what was working and try to manage what was not. And I realized that many projects indeed were really doing well in market or arriving to market in a successful way, and many others were failing, either in market or even before arriving to market. They wouldn't see the light of the day. And then I was like, okay, maybe I need to tweak, the process in some of these things that are not working. I tried, but long story short, at a certain point, I realized the obvious. What was really making the difference in all these projects were the people behind those projects. If I was working with one of these big firms, it was not about the firm, but it was about the people that were assigning to my project. Some people were great and were doing great things, and some others were not. In our cross-functional teams in design, marketing, R&D, all the different functions, it was all about the right people there. And when I say right people, the ability to observe reality in a certain way, to be sensitive to the audience that we have in front of us, to understand what are the most important and relevant insights, how to translate them in an idea, in a concept, how to test them, how once you have the right idea, push that idea through the system with resilience, with courage, how much courage you have, and how much ability then you have to take others with you in the journey, and many other things. So at a certain point, I was like, wow, all of this is so much more important than the process and the tool. I need a process, but the process is like a pen or a brush. Put the brush in the hands of Picasso or put the brush in the hands of my tax accountant, probably the result is going to be different. And yet I was observing so many companies out there embracing, for instance, design thinking, but this applies to any other culture, embracing a new process, a new approach. And then things were not working and they would blame the tool. Oh, I brought in design thinking. I brought in this design firm. We did all this workshop. We're running things with this new tool and things are not working. Well, when you were blaming design thinking because of that, you were blaming the brush. You were blaming the brush not to produce the masterpiece of Picasso without understanding there was Picasso behind the brush or there was somebody else. So I came up with a list of characteristics that I thought were important for these people. And this came out of real practice and practical need. I was building a design organization in the company. And when I wrote the list, I was 5-6 years in 3M, plus the 3-4 years before, with my agency and everything. So on the base of that practice and experience, I was like, okay, this is what worked for me. I wrote the list, I gave it to HR, our talent acquisition team, and I told them, now you're going to use this list to filter the people. I still need all the technical skills and all the things that we always associate to leadership, but I need also these things. And they were skills that were eventually not that obvious.
Well, you need to give us a list. What were they?
Yeah, kindness, optimism, curiosity, resilience is more obvious, but respect, humbleness combined with confidence, a variety of different things that often, some of them you think, well, it's nice if we have humble people that are also confident, but how many times we use kindness as a filter to select the people we're hiring, or even to select the managers of our organizations, to promote people, to grow people, to decide who are going to be the next CEOs and business leaders and marketing leaders and R&D leaders. So I came up with this list. I gave it to HR. It became the very first list became the topic of a paper that I wrote for the Design Management Institute review called Love Letter to Design. But mostly it became a filter to find people, a compass for myself and for my teams to better ourselves, to keep learning and growing across those different variables. And then I tested and tweaked and validated the list, and the list evolved. And the one that we find in the book today is the final list validated by 25 years of experience in literally focusing on these characteristics and seeing if they work or not. And there are 24 traits that define these leaders that I call unicorns, or people in love with people, the subtitle of the book. And again, some are more obvious. For instance, the ability to think big, the ability to dream. And we're all born with that ability. So it's not something that we're all born with the ability to dream. We all dream as kids and we fantasize, but then society tells us that is not really okay.
You have to do it this way.
Yeah, they try to normalize us because dreaming is difficult to control. You don't want too many people to dream. You want people to comply, to be armies around.
You need like the worker ants.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But we still, the most of us still are able to protect some form of dreaming until they go to college, they get out, or whatever school you do, you go to work and you think, wow, I come here and now I can change things. I can really, make things different in this company, until you find people that tell you, why you arrogance, how arrogant is from you to think You can change anything. You can change. This company has been like this for years, or this product, or this industry, or this category. And then you think, he's right, she's right.
That was the response
arrogant from me. I should stop dreaming. We stop dreaming. And so many people, though, are still able to dream. There are some, that protect that ability. The problem is that dreaming is not enough. You need also to combine that ability to dream and think big with the ability to make things happen, to execute. And with that, with the ability to take trade-offs and compromises. And don't look at those as just trade-offs and compromises, but as progressive steps towards the dream. But to do that, you need to give intent to the trade-off, purpose to the trade-off. That's why you need a dream. But you need to balance the two and understand how to manage them together. Now, this is, if you study leadership, if you read books about leadership, this is anyway not new. And even though you don't see this practice so many times in companies, often the performance review processes don't reward the ability of somebody of dreaming, of being visionary.
Yeah, it's not like a tick box to have like, here's
like,
reward.
Okay, what are your results in this year, in this cycle? And there is an interesting article from Fortune in the past few days that is really talking about performance reviews in companies and how useful they are versus eventually being even negative or neutral or not interesting or not relevant to people. And they talk exactly about this. How can we reward the ability, for instance, of people to be visionary, or the ability of people of storytelling and creating positive reputation for their companies on their own by sharing what they do, the vision, the original point of view, and many other things. But anyway, going back to the characteristics, these are more obvious. There are others that I mentioned, some of them I mentioned earlier, that are not obvious at all.
Mauro, we're gonna have to save this for part 2 because I gotta let you go at some point. We're gonna do part 2 because I love this, because I mentioned to you earlier before, one of the reasons I left that company after 10 years is every time I was coming to the table challenging the status quo, I would be seen as the troublemaker. Again, when I said no more cold calling and just calling for the sake of calling, let's be more focused, let's use different mediums. I was always the trouble. Let's forget about doing it via mail, which we used to do, and build a website, do online, build an online payment gateway. What do you mean online? People aren't going to buy online, Chris. All of those things, it was like, and I got so frustrated that I took the extreme example of going, I'm just going to start my company. That I didn't even think that there was other companies that could give me that room to run and just go with it, right? And Shane is that person, like you said. I'm the kind of challenging dreamer, and Shane's the get it, that Shane executes on it as my co-founder and makes it happen. But listen, where can people find the book? I know they can follow you on LinkedIn, so that link's already below, but where can they grab a copy of the book?
In all your bookstores, online, physical. Obviously, Amazon is an easy place to go. The human side of innovation, the power of people in love with people. And you can find me in LinkedIn, as you said, also in Instagram. Super active there. You can connect with me in those two.
Amazing. And for everyone listening, as always, all of those links are below. So make sure you go connect with Mauro on LinkedIn, on Instagram. Also grab a copy of the book. But thank you so much. I love everything that you're doing. I'm so excited to share it with our community. And I wish you all the best until we next week.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.